Its winds peaked at 175 kilometers per hour. It cost more than 250 lives, and for survivors, it left a price tag of some $71 billion. When Hurricane Sandy gathered momentum, reporters jockeyed for the pictures and stories that would best attract an audience. Help arrived from Canada and beyond. Donations poured in. But after the winds died, so did the public's appetite for wall-to-wall coverage. Coming up, the story from Sandy's ground zero, as we examine what happens after the cameras leave. This is Context, a look at life beyond the headlines.
Hurricane Sandy dominated media headlines. It left parts of New York and New Jersey in devastation, millions left without power and homes, and many reported dead. But what changes after media attention moves on to the next biggest story? What about lives still left behind? Here to help give us a sense of what it's like covering stories of devastation and what it's like for those who live them is Brad Cumming, Operation Manager for Burlington Hydro, and Daryl Kneinenbelt, the Manager of Public Engagement and New Ventures for World Vision Canada. Welcome to Context, gentlemen. Nice to have you. Great to have you. Hi, Brad. Have a seat. Super. Okay, Brad, we promised from ground zero we'd hear what it's like. You are just recently back from...
Yeah, we just returned back November 15th from ground zero there, and we've seen a lot of devastation, a lot of flooded areas throughout Long Island. We were in Long Island, New York, the Long Beach area, which was really flooded. As we drove down streets, we seen sand throughout the streets, people's belongings, you know, their dishwashers, their furniture, their belongings, all out on the sidewalks, and we were really amazed of what had gone on, and in talking to some of the people, there was big high-rise condo buildings that shifted because of all the wave and the wind, and people can't move back in there anymore.
You were there the day that they were allowed to first come back in and look at what they had lost. Right. Tell me what you encountered.
We talked to a lady, the first job that we had, the lady come out on her balcony, and you just looked at her house and it was destroyed. And she come out on the balcony and she asked us, she was more concerned about how we were and how we were doing, and could she do anything for us? And as soon as we asked her, you know, how are you? She started to cry. And I turned and looked, and the guys with me, they started to cry. And, you know, that was our first cry of many the whole time that we were down there.
These big, tough hydro guys,
yeah.
From Canada, crying with the victims.
Yeah.
Daryl, we count on the media, and you have your past experience at Global TV as a reporter there. Now you are helping the story of trauma on a global scale be told to motivate us to care. Mm-hmm. The cameras leave. You work at World Vision trying to catch our attention. How does the media decide that, okay, Sandy's done, or East Africa's done? How do we decide?
Well, I think the media decides because they're beholden to what's happening in the news cycle. I mean, days happen, and the media will cover the story du jour, if you will. It's one of those things that you always have to compete with. I mean, the headlines are gone. What do you do as an NGO to keep these things alive and well for the mainstream public and for the public even that's watching? A show like this helps keep those crises alive. The fact that you're talking about Hurricane Sandy, you know, today there's a headline that talks about auto sales increasing because the number of people lost their cars in Hurricane Sandy, but you don't hear about the individual story that we know, the intel that we have of the people that we're working with on the ground in that area, that there's still sewage, there's still mold, it's toxic, it's smelly, and people are going to get sick, and they're still getting sick. And you're talking about hundreds of people. So we know this story, but how do you get that out there into the mainstream when the media have left?
Brad, as you walked with the Sandy victims, what does it do for their morale, for them to know the world is watching and caring?
They were really happy that Canada came to help. They really appreciated our help. the people that were there seemed fine. They seemed calm, and they just appreciated that we were there.
Because it makes such a difference when they know they're not alone. Daryl, does the media have a stake in how it decides what area is going to be touched by which camera crew, how devastation is going to be covered? How do they decide which is the important story that they're going to go for?
You know, I don't think you ever really, you know that this happens and you go with instinct. You really use your intrepidness to sniff out a story and to find out where am I going to get that best part of the story that's going to create some sort of empathy that my public audience back home will resonate with them. And I think we have to look to the media as to say they have a really important role when covering these disasters, because what they do is they create the need. And then it helps the NGO, if you will. And in World Vision's case, we have people outpouring of support for Hurricane Sandy, and to provide funds that will help you do these put these programs in place. And we have a project there for at least 3 years of building insulation, drywall, simple necessities of life.
Not very glamorous stuff, but what does happen when the cameras leave?
When the cameras leave, that stuff keeps happening. It keeps going on. What you don't see is the same stuff that happened while the cameras were there, and that stuff still keeps happening when the cameras leave. What happens is that in a rapid onset, or even something like a massive disaster, you see all the supplies coming in because there's more cameras and there's more reporters. So these stories get picked up even more. But that never stops. That long-term recovery continues.
Yeah. And partnerships are being made now that never used to be made, where because media is no longer affording to send international crews like it used to be able to send, because there's been this glut of media. Do you see an interest that media companies are saying, we want to cover the long-term story?
Absolutely. I think the passion is they're all storytellers. Yeah. I have many colleagues who are saddened and disheartened the fact that foreign budgets are being cut, because the stories where these incidents happen, these disasters where they seem to happen, seem to be in those areas that we can't touch.
Brad, you did touch the areas. You walked there, you worked there, you restored hydro. What touched you most about your experience of being involved in the trauma?
The people. The people touched, I think, all of us. We all had a story when we came back about the people, about the lady that I was talking about earlier on the balcony, about the lady with the sick child when we worked through the nor'easter and the snowstorm to get her power back on so her son would be safe and warm so he can have surgery in 2 weeks. Just walking down the street, making sure the power was on one night, a little 10-year-old girl comes up, and she was with her mom and her aunt, and she comes straight up to us and gives us a hug and says, "Thank you for coming." I can't help. I tear up when I think about it, or I tear up, just with those stories. So, the people were amazing to us down there. They're happy to see Canadians. They even called us Canucks a couple times, and which was all right.
Thank you both for reminding us that we have to keep looking at the story, helping with the story, long after the headline rush is over. Thank you both.
Thanks, Laura.
Now it's time to find out what you think. Were you aware of the extent of damage caused by Hurricane Sandy? Yes or no, send us your answers by phone, Facebook, or Twitter, and you can be part of the conversation. Our studio audience is taking a live vote, and I'll have those results in a moment. But coming up, when you are faced with trauma, how do you bounce back? We'll speak with one man who will tell us his investigation from a scientific point of view, a few solutions. More on that after the break.